Give me the address, and I'll come get you, Arthur declared. Thanks. With that, Arthur hung up and began the drive to the doctor's office where Gwendolyn waited. CH5, a change of plans. Arriving to the location Gwendolyn gave, Arthur pulled up to see his younger sister standing outside, looking off into the distance until her gaze fell onto the parked truck. Arthur rolled down the passenger side window to call Gwendolyn over. Come on. Gwendolyn smiled at him before rushing over to get in the truck. As she got in, she turned to Arthur and exhaled. Thanks again. They had me wait outside for you. Why? Couldn't you have waited inside? I would have came in and got you either way. It's part of their new policy or whatever. Gwendolyn rolled her eyes as she did air quotes. They apparently don't let in visitors. Arthur shook his head at this silly notion before starting the truck again and pulling away. As he drove, the humming from Talia became slightly high-pitched as anxiety began to take over. Go home now, she moaned, wringing her hands and began rocking in her seat, her anxiety raising significantly. Tension rised slowly, then quickly like a stove pot with boiling water. Arthur watched Talia worriedly as he attempted to keep his eyes on the road as well as keeping Talia calm. We're going home soon. I have to drop Gwendolyn off first, he mentioned in a quick attempt to keep things leveled. That wasn't what Talia wanted to hear. This enraged her, causing her to become self-injurious. She began slapping her cheeks while screaming and crying. Home now, she wailed. Usually when Talia experienced a meltdown or became self-injurious, Arthur could get her to a level of calmness. But not this time. Arthur could see what was about to happen, but was effortless to stop it as he tried to keep the truck on the road. In a swift move, Talia lunged forward, grabbing Gwendolyn's long black hair and pulling it while scratching her across the jaw in the process. Caught by surprise by Talia's sudden actions, Gwendolyn shouted in distress while trying to get Talia to let go. All in the middle of trying to drive as well as getting Talia to release Gwendolyn, Arthur knew that keeping the truck on the road was bound to be unsuccessful. Thinking quick, he yanked on the steering wheel, pulling the truck over to a sidewalk. In the midst of her brother pulling over, Gwendolyn barely was able to get Talia's angry fingers free from her hair. Arthur exited the truck and rushed over to the backseat door, but before he could open the door, Gwendolyn took hold of Talia's wrists and yanked free from her grasp. Gasping, Gwendolyn rustled her hair in an attempt to fix and assess the various scratches across her jaw in the driver's mirror. Opening the door, Arthur eyed Talia with a bewildered expression. Slight anger and confusion caused his face to appear less kind. What's gotten into you, huh? What's going on with you? Arthur questioned. His hands rested on his hips as he gazed at his wife. His breaths were heavy as he panted. Shameful, Talia looked away as she brought the webbed part of her hand to her mouth and began gnawing on it. Watching with concern, Arthur exhaled slowly as he hung his head. Both felt the immense pressure of the events draining from them as their bodies seemed to deflate. Their breathing slowed and the physical space seemed to relax, allowing them to return to a sense of broken calmness. Looking around a bit, Arthur gave Talia a tired expression. What do you want to do? Do you want to take a walk? Arthur asked. Talia glanced at him, shaking her head no. Do you want to go home? Another shake of her head. Do you want to eat? Are you hungry or thirsty? Yet another head shake, this time with a soft hum and quick huff. Exasperated, Arthur threw up his hands, giving Talia a look of slight irritation. Well, I don't know what you want me to do here. What do you want? The tone in Arthur's voice caused a tremor of fear to course through Talia, appending a wave of emotions that brought her to tears. She began weeping softly, which made Arthur sigh with guilt. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out how to help you, he finally said, trying to create a more calming tone which threatened to be erased by his exasperation. Gwendolyn slowly exited the truck and dusted her clothes as she approached Arthur. She stood nearby, unsure if she should help or get back inside the truck. Is everything all right? She asked, worry creasing her features. Massaging his temples, Arthur scoffed lightly before looking skyward and blowing a long huff. After a moment, he looked towards his sister. You tell me. Arthur gestured towards himself. Gwendolyn eyes him carefully before rubbing her chin lightly. Well, personally, I think I could go for a walk, she commented. Attempting to tamper down his returning annoyance, Arthur turned to Talia, who had ceased crying, but had began clapping in a moderate tempo while humming along to her own rhythm. Do you want to go on a walk? Will that help you? he asked, unsure if anything would work at this point. With some calmness, Talia managed a small nod and quickly unbuckled her seatbelt before hopping out of the truck with a medium-pitched moan that suggested she was able to be redirected to a relaxed state. She began skipping and slapping her legs along with a quickened pace. Arthur and Gwendolyn followed, keeping a distance but remaining in view of Talia in case she got too far ahead. As they walked, Arthur slowed his pace to match Gwendolyn and bent down slightly for her to hear him. "Are you okay? Did she hurt you?" "Not really, but I was very shocked when she started pulling my hair." "What happened?" Standing at his full height, Arthur turned to glance towards Talia before looking at Gwendolyn. "I don't know what happened went wrong. She had an incident at the center today, and no one told me why she had a meltdown." "Nothing major happened that I could think of," Arthur said. He then looked Talia's way again to find her further than he liked. "Talia, slow down please," he shouted after her. Talia calmed her, skipping to a slow pace before coming to a complete stop and lightly tapping her legs rhythmically. Both Gwendolyn and Arthur continued their walk as Talia bounded ahead. A brick partition continued down the way they walked until they all came to a stop at an intersection. The partition stopped short of the intersection where a green park bench sat against it across from a nearby bus stop. The trio sat on the bench, Talia's rhythmic rocking and humming giving a somewhat soothing presence. Arthur sat slightly forward, his face morphing from confusion to resignation as he sighed deeply. His clasped hands patted against each other as he wrestled with his inner thoughts. Gwendolyn looked onward, watching people come and go. Her eyes scanned the various cars before turning her attention to her brother. "Are you okay, Arthur?" "Maybe. I don't know," Arthur responded, his voice deadpan. Talia's humming and rocking had relaxed significantly as she stood up and walked slowly towards the bus stop in a manner that resembled someone in a hungover state. Her feet stumbled one after the other as her once tensed arms brought her hands together in sharp, monotone claps. Arthur eyed her curiously, yet his body tensed with concern that this could signal another meltdown to occur. Seeing her return to a sense of calm, Arthur relaxed a bit himself while sitting up. "Think it's time to go?" he asked, facing his sister. "I think you should be asking that to Talia, not me." Gwendolyn chuckled. "Fair enough." Arthur stood up, watching his wife pace back and forth between people as they attempt to move past her. "You ready to head home?" Arthur asked. At the sound of his voice, Talia stopped pacing and slowly headed in Arthur's direction until she stopped a few feet before him. "Go home?" "Arthur, promise," Talia uttered. Her voice leveled with concern and uncertainty as she stood, her fingers twirling around one another in a repetitive motion. "Yes, I promise. I promise we are heading home this time. No more stops," Arthur declared. He reached tentatively with one arm, the act gentle. Talia eyed Arthur suspiciously, weighing if he was telling the truth or not. Finally deciding he was, she gave a small smile. "No more stops," Talia repeated. Arthur nodded reassuringly as Talia took hold of his hand and he led her back to their parked truck. Gwendolyn quietly followed behind them, giving a tentative expression at the pair's backs. CH6, Comical Relief. A few days after Talia's unfortunate meltdown, lying on his back in bed, Arthur scrubbed at his face as he came to from a deep sleep. Staring up at the ceiling, he tried fitfully to go back to sleep. Unaware of her presence, Talia had entered the bedroom, her posture hesitant and nervous. Yet she approached Arthur and leaned over him, her arms folded loosely over her chest. "Breakfast," Talia said. She didn't move from her spot as Arthur rested his eyes. This prompted Talia to lean in a bit closer, shouting her response. "Breakfast time, Arthur." This caused him to startle and sit up. Seeing his wife standing close to him, he closed his eyes and leaned back against the cushioned headboard of their bed. 5 minutes, please," Arthur murmured wearily. With sudden joy after hearing this, Talia skipped happily out of the room, heading downstairs to the kitchen. Arthur knew he had a few seconds to really get up before Talia would come back to chastise him. Fully rubbing his face, Arthur sat up and looked up at the ceiling once more, scoffing. Climbing out of bed in nothing but his underwear, Arthur hurried down the stairs to find Talia standing by the kitchen island waiting for him. What met Arthur's eyes was more than normal kitchen mess. Waffle mix, both dried and fresh, coated the counters and island in a sticky mush as well as Talia herself. Utensils such as spoons and butter knives laid haphazardly about on the counters alongside a waffle maker that seemed to explode with waffle mix. Arthur had stopped at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes screaming his words instead. Not immediately noticing her husband's unpleased face, Talia gave a smile and gestured to the messy work of breakfast. All done. I can see that, dear. How what happened here? Arthur stuttered, stricken that one person could cause such a mess with waffle mix. Breakfast. For Talia. For Arthur. Talia responded. Her voice wavered slightly, sensing that Arthur was upset. Absent-mindedly, she took a step back as he slowly walked towards her before stopping. Raising his palms calmly, Arthur gave Talia a reassuring nod. I'm not upset with you. Just a little surprised at the amount of waffle mix you used, that's all. Tilting her head slightly, Talia looked at Arthur as if he didn't understand what she was attempting to do for them. Sighing deeply, Arthur glanced at the mess again, then faced Talia with a newfound smile. How about this? How about we clean this up and go out today? Just you and me, Arthur suggested, gesturing invitingly to Talia. Inquisitively, Talia studied Arthur, her eyes shining with newfound wonder. Out? Nodding, Arthur gradually approached Talia, stopping inches from her. Yes, just you and me. Leaning forward, Arthur gave Talia a gentle kiss on her forehead as he tenderly cupped her face. Talia embraced him, finding warmth in his touch. Finally letting go, Talia turned away and bounded up the stairs to their bedroom to change. Arthur followed, a playful smile forming on his face. Maybe getting out will do us some good, Arthur thought to himself. CH7. Bountiful outings. Gwen come too? Talia questioned, following Arthur to the parked truck outside. Wearing her favorite blue and yellow sunflower summer dress, along with brown sandals rimmed with colorful fake gemstones, Talia's excitement was barely kept back as her forearms moved in a dance that resembled swaying tree branches that swayed wherever the wind took them. As Arthur helped her into the back seat, he smiled kindly. She's busy with court work today, but maybe I can call her later to see if she can join us. With Talia in the back seat, Arthur helped her into a safety harness connected to the inner workings of the truck's seating. He had installed it 2 days after Talia had her episode to ensure her safety as well as any passenger in front. Having worn a harness in her time at Tender Care, Talia was used to wearing one, but with new people and new environments, the ordeal felt new and slightly unfamiliar to her. Hesitant, Talia moaned uncomfortably while rhythmically tapping the seat next her. What's the matter? Arthur asked, concern crossing his features. Watching Talia carefully, he stopped what he was doing and leaned against the backseat doorframe. Not able to fully convey what was bothering her, Talia tugged at the harness, which was partially fastened. Yet her rising anxiety wasn't about the harness. Rather, loneliness crept past her excitement of enjoying their outing. Looking behind him then back to Talia, Arthur stepped back from the doorframe and gave Talia his full attention. Is this about Gwendolyn not coming with us? Talia nodded, facing the opposite window. Giving a short understanding nod, Arthur scratched at his chin before facing her again. We can call Gwendolyn when we get to our first destination, yeah? Do you want to do that? Turning to face him, Talia grabbed Arthur's hands, which rested next her, and squeezed it in agreement. Okay, let's get going, shall we? Talia allowed Arthur to finish fastening the harness before closing the door and climbing into the driver's seat. Glancing at Talia in the rearview mirror, he gave a gentle smirk. Where do you want to go? He asked. Talia perked up at the question, unsure for a split second if he had said what he said correctly. Whenever they did go out, it was for an errand or a quick trip to the local donut shop Talia favored. A location she hadn't been to since the moment they started dating one another sprung to mind. Park. Humboldt Park, Talia uttered. Okay then. Humboldt Park it is, Arthur responded. Turning over the engine, Arthur put it in drive and pulled away from their home and towards their destination. CH8, slow-paced joys. Arriving to the park, the couple noticed that there were not many people about, which was heaven to Talia. Probably more so for Arthur as crowds were a bit of a nuance as he often felt like he was suffocating. Pulling over, Arthur turned the truck off and got out. Walking to the backseat door, Arthur helped Talia unbuckle herself and she jumped out of the truck, excitement flooding her body as she began sprinting down a small hilltop towards the main pathway of the park. Hurriedly, Arthur followed behind in an attempt to keep up. Wait up, I'm coming, Arthur shouted, running behind her. As the two slowed their pace, they soon came face to face with openness of the park. Humboldt Park was like any other nature park, but since the new addition of park benches and pathways, the change was significant enough for Talia to pause, taking in the new sights with a hesitant yet curious expression. Catching up with her, Arthur followed her gaze and stopped beside her, his face showing surprise at the new changes. They really did upgrade it, Arthur declared breathlessly. Suddenly, with high-spirited energy, Talia took off running through the pathway, narrowingly missing people. Understanding that she wasn't running off, Arthur followed, the park becoming blurs of nature and people. Talia's bubbly laughter turned into high-pitched squeals as she turned her head to look back as Arthur followed suit. Coming up to a large hill, Talia came to a stop and started rolling herself down it, with Arthur doing the same when he caught up with his wife. Rumbling laughter left Arthur's throat as he and Talia slowed to a sudden stop at the end of the hill. That was fun, wasn't it? Arthur chuckled breathlessly. Propping himself on his elbows, he glanced over at Talia, who was giggling as she laid on the soft, plush grass. For a split second, Arthur could swear Talia looked normal. Her face showed pure joy as her grin exposed dimples that hadn't been there before unless she experienced genuine happiness. Her radiant curly coffee-toned hair only added to her gentle features. Talia's monolid eyes with amber irises glowed with the sunlight, making her round face more prominent. Then she spoke, breaking Arthur's sudden fantasy of seeing his wife as anything but who she was. Again, Talia shouted joyfully as she got up from the ground. I'm a little old for rolling down hills. How about we take a rest, yeah? Arthur suggested. Getting up, Arthur dusted his clothes off and waited for Talia to follow him. The two walked alongside each other in comfortable silence, with Talia stopping for a few moments to gather various flowers and leaves. Spotting a new dark forest green bench, Arthur gestured to Talia for them to take a break. Crumbs of crushed leaves coated Talia's lap as she rubbed them against her slender fingers. The various flowers rested next to her, her eyes laser-focused on the crumbs of leaves. Arthur watched in silent amusement, curiosity dancing in his own eyes. Arthur? Talia, a familiar voice called out. Talia recognized that voice anywhere. Its calming tone flowed through the park's ambience like piano keys playing a soothing melody. Gwen! Talia yelled, getting up and rushing towards Gwendolyn and hugging her in an almost crushing embrace. Gwendolyn had come to the park for her own recreation, and seeing the couple there surprised her. Hi, Talia. I didn't know you and Arthur were here today. Come sit. Talia instructed, pulling on Gwendolyn's hand. Okay then. Gwendolyn willingly followed Talia to the bench that she and Arthur were sitting on and guided her friend to join them. So Talia roped you into joining us then? Arthur asked, amused. Yeah, I guess so. How are you two doing? Doing okay. As much as anyone is. Sighing, Arthur leaned back against the bench, hands in his pockets. How come you're here? Scanning the park's various flower beds and pond with ducks quacking and swimming, Gwendolyn turned to her brother. She scoffed sharply before speaking. Needed some space from the office. Felt like I was suffocating. The boss has been a real hard-ass lately. That tracks. No wonder you've been away for a while. Arthur replied. Silence then enveloped the space between the siblings as they watched Talia blissfully skip a short distance back and forth from a large oak tree with gorgeous autumn leaves to a small pond with a family of ducks. Spinning as she skipped, Talia's laughs carried listlessly as her hands twirled and clapped and flicked. They felt as if they were extending into the wind, sharing a bond unshared, a secret only Talia knew of. Her spinning, humming, and clapping became quicker and quicker, as if she was part of some unseen tango between her and the breeze. Ding! A sudden bell ring, recognizable to many, filtered through Talia's ears, ending her quick dance with nature as she slowed to a stop. Her eyes scanned the park until they rested on an ice cream stand with a cheerful man handing out ice cream cones to waiting kids and their parents. Gaining a craving for the sweet treat, Talia then skipped back to where Arthur and Gwendolyn sat and tugged on Gwendolyn's hand. Ice cream, Gwen. I want ice cream, she shouted excitedly. Raising an eyebrow at Arthur, Gwendolyn looked at Talia warmly. You gotta ask Arthur. I don't have money for ice cream. Amusingly, Arthur gave a mirthless chuckle. I guess you assume I have it? Ice cream, Arthur. I want ice cream, Talia urged. She jumped up and down as she held onto Gwendolyn's hand. Reluctantly, Arthur stood and shrugged humorously. Why the hell not? Let's get some ice cream then. Gwendolyn and Talia then headed to the ice cream stand where they stood behind a couple and two kids. An elderly man appeared behind them, wanting in on a treat. "Even Autumn can't keep ice cream lovers away," Arthur said. Talia and Gwendolyn stood just slightly behind him. "What flavor do you want, Talia?" "I'm getting strawberry," Gwendolyn stated. "Chocolate," Talia replied, rocking slightly in place. Once the couple and the kids got their frozen treats, Arthur approached the seller and greeted him. "Hi, can we get 3 ice cream cones?" "Sure. What flavors do you want?" the seller asked, his loud yet joyful voice booming from where he stood. Turning around to get the attention of Gwendolyn and Talia as he got his wallet out, Arthur's face suddenly fell. Panic flooded his body as he saw one person wasn't there. She was gone. Ch9, panic. Mouth dry as the Sahara Desert, Arthur gaped as he nervously looked around the park. Unaware of his looming panic, people began entering the park for their own outings, enjoying the smooth breeze that warmed and chilled their bones. Noticing Arthur's worrying facial expressions, Gwendolyn watched him with concern. "Everything all right?" "Where's Talia?" "She was just right here," Arthur asked, attempting to keep his anxiety at bay. "I don't know. I was watching some kids play soccer." "I'm sorry," Gwendolyn started. Sweat began to gather onto Arthur's face as he rubbed a hand down it, his hand resting on his chin. His breaths quickened along with his heartbeat, creating a throbbing sensation and causing the park's ambience to appear muffled. This was one of his biggest fears. Losing Talia in a large crowd knowing she wouldn't understand hidden dangers of the environment she was in. Being a police lieutenant didn't help with this fact. Arthur understood safety measures well, and especially in regards to keeping Talia safe whenever she was with him. Sure, she could be at home for an hour or two without harming herself, but even Arthur felt that was risky given the lack of situational awareness Talia had. Essentially feeling Arthur's panic herself, Gwendolyn glanced around the park before slowly approaching her brother, placing her hands on his trembling shoulders. "We're gonna find her. I promise." "Okay." Arthur nodded, releasing a shuddering breath. Gwendolyn patted Arthur's shoulders as she stepped back and looked around. "I'm gonna search on this side of the park while you search the other side. I'm sure we can cover most of the park." She couldn't have gone that far. Exhaling deeply, Arthur rubbed his face again before jogging off back the way they came to trace Talia's steps. Passing the hill they rolled down, Arthur quickly watched as kids and parents chased each other, screams and shrieks piercing through the air. Yet he couldn't stop. Knowing Talia, she could have gone outside the park, lost to the city's elements. Continuing on his path, Arthur passed babies and strollers, couples having picnics, and more. Taking a quick rest to catch his breath, Arthur panted hard as he braced himself against a park streetlight. Why did you have to choose the park to do this? He thought, annoyance taking over his initial concern. Pushing himself to a standing position, Arthur let out a frustrated sigh. He hoped he wasn't too late with finding his wife. Time was of the essence. Ch10, fighting words. Time seemed to slow down, almost casting the park in slow motion like a camera filming falling leaves one click at a time. Water droplets fell freely as Talia stomped her feet, causing puddles to ripple through the pond and scaring away the tiny family of ducks. Sending them quacking and squawking, Talia paid no mind them, continuing her soundless tango with water becoming the only thing guiding her body. It felt cool. Cold even. Her once flowing dress now laden and heavy clung to her like hair sticking to one's body after a deep shower. A wide grin never leaving her face, Talia's eyes were closed and her mouth hung slightly agape in an attempt to catch the falling water. Joy and ecstasy took over her limbs, causing her to spin faster and her arms flap harder. Echoing, bubbling laughs were the only sounds anyone else heard aloud from Talia. A few kids with their loved ones stood and gazed at this unheard and unseen dance this woman did. Some even chuckled, mostly in bewilderment at something strange and new happening before their own eyes. One kid even pointed out the odd dance. "Look, Mommy, that woman's dancing funny." In a rushed manner, the boy's mother shushed his curiosity and pulled him away from the growing scene and to another area of the park. People began gathering, pointing, and staring. Some even laughed and mocked Talia's movements. But Talia couldn't hear or see them. The water was too deep, too overpowering to stop. She couldn't break up their dance cause folks stared at her. Her laughter grew into loud, almost crackling with pure entertainment and happiness as she continued spinning, flapping, and clapping. Like a rushing waterfall, Talia's body felt like a roller coaster on a never-ending track with no way to stop. Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing? A voice unfamiliar and angry flooded through Talia's ears, stopping her movements completely. A new sense took over. Fear. Why fear? Shouldn't she have been safe in a park? Angry, black and gray stomping rain boots closed in, showing an older man with a graying goatee and side-parted salt and pepper hair, his protruding beer belly straining against his blue silk shirt. Storming up to Talia, he motioned aggressively at her to move. His face a light yellowing tone, creased with upset and disgust as he closed the distance between him and Talia. Get out of there. What's the matter with you, huh? The man's sudden anger caused Talia's facial expression to crumble, whimpers escaping her. Her hands flew to her ears in an attempt to drown out his grating voice. She didn't know if she should move or stay to finish her interrupted water dance. Once more, the man advanced. Get the hell out of here, the man hollered, aggressively shooing Talia away from the pond. Suddenly hearing the commotion and seeing his wife in clear distress, Arthur charged over to the scene, approaching the man in equal measure. Hey, what is wrong with you, picking on someone enjoying their time outside? Arthur demanded. This caused the man to spin around, coming to face with Arthur's full height. Who the hell are you? The man sneered. He looked Arthur up and down, checking to see if he was really challenging his actions. That's none of your damn business. I want to know why you're bothering her, Arthur commanded. In the midst of the men facing off each other, Gwendolyn had caught up with them, taking a whimpering Talia into her arms. It's okay. You're safe now, she whispered softly, holding Talia close. That woman was stomping all over the pond. She even scared the ducks away, the man shouted, pointing in Talia's direction. That woman is my wife. She isn't like most people. She did nothing wrong but play in a pond. She doesn't deserve to be lower to your standards, Arthur declared, his eyes stormy. People like her shouldn't exist out in public. They're an embarrassment to society. She's an embarrassment to this park. Wanting to choke the older man for his unnecessary harsh words, Arthur closed his hands into fists as he stepped up to the man, their bodies just barely touching one another. People like her? An embarrassment. Arthur seethed. He paused, stepping away before instantly moving to the man again, their faces inches apart. Arthur lowered his voice to a measured, deadly whisper. Sir, I hope you never ever have to experience being cared for by another person. I hope you never feel the immense joy my wife feels dancing to her own rhythm. I hope and pray that none of your kids, grandkids, or great-grandchildren never experience having the struggles my wife has. These moments she has are so fucking rare, and I cherish every single second. I hope you never forget the pain you caused her today. Finishing his rightful vent, Arthur stood to his height and glared at the man. The man slowly backed away, fear now taking over his body. Arthur gave a sideways look at him. Now I think it's best that you got out of here. The man only stared. I don't think you heard me, Arthur began, his features growing humorous for a moment. The man remained rooted at the spot, his facial expression showing confusion at Arthur's tone. Sensing the man was taking too long to leave, Arthur took the same menacing stance the man took with Talia and aggressively motioned at him. Get the hell out of here, Arthur yelled, shooing the man away from the area. Stumbling over his own feet, the man ran off, nearly running over a runner and her German shepherd, causing the large dog to bark at him aggressively. Scoffing and shaking his head, Arthur approached Gwendolyn and Talia, his anger flashing through his eyes, only to be tampered down at the sight of his whimpering wife. He walked up to her and checked her over for any signs of injury or discomfort. You okay? Arthur asked tenderly. Talia wet. Talia cold. Talia moaned wearily, hugging herself. I know. Arthur sighed wearily. He rubbed at his face apprehensively. Gwendolyn gave a worried look between the couple, eyes misty. Maybe we should get going, she suggested. Nodding resolutely, Arthur led the women back to the area where they entered the park. As they walked, Arthur could feel the stranger's eyes on him, embarrassment and irritation overwhelming his thoughts. What did they need to say that he wasn't feeling already? He also didn't want people pitying him or Talia. That was the worst feeling. Pity. Arthur understood that Talia needed him and that he needed her. Yet, this constant need for one another came with feelings of guilt and resentment. Did Talia's needing him overshadow his own needs? Often wondering this, Arthur understood she needed more care, more guidance than most adults. He never held that against her. Yet he wondered how life would be had she been normal. Too late for that, Arthur thought bitterly. CH11, Calming Storms. Returning home after a quick stop at the laundromat and dropping Gwendolyn off, Arthur was more than ready to relax the rest of the day. Unfortunately for him, Talia had other ideas. Restless from their eventful outing to Humboldt Park, her energy seemed to rise tenfold as she began happily skipping about the entrance of their living room, her wrists and fingers twirling in a circular motion at face level. Elongated hums mixed with short yelps emitted from deep within Talia as she attempted to bring herself back together. The ability to do so became difficult until her gaze drifted to Arthur, who was heading to the kitchen for a soda. As he closed the refrigerator, Arthur noticed Talia's gaze, and that gave her the momentum to skip over to him, her thumbs in her ears and eyes focused on the floor. "Dance, Arthur." Tilting his head in confusion, Arthur blinked a few times in surprise at her direct statement. "Dance, please." "Arthur, dance with Talia." Talia clarified, her gaze settling onto her husband's amused expression. Playing along, Arthur raised his eyebrows curiously at her. "What do I get out of this dance?" Arthur inquired, pausing to open his can of soda. In bounding skips, Talia hoisted herself up and onto the marble counter so she was facing Arthur. Simultaneously patting the counter, Talia hummed contentedly while twisting her torso that turned into whole body twirling as she brought her hands close to her chin, tapping them quickly together. Arthur smiled at her, her joy infectious. "You're silly, you know that?" "Silly." Talia repeated the word to herself, giggling. "Yes, you. You are a very silly lady." As he said this, Arthur playfully picked Talia up from off the counter and began spinning her. This caused Talia to laugh, really laugh. Her laughter echoed in the kitchen, causing Arthur to laugh along with her. Slowing their spinning, he began lightly swaying them side to side. Arthur then started singing softly. "You're my silly lady. My silly lady. Silly little lady." Talia replied. "Silly little lady." Arthur sang back. The kitchen and living room blurred together slowly as the two continued their swaying, their foreheads touching. Their eyes locked on each other for a few seconds, giving Arthur a real glance into his wife's tender eyes. Her eyes shared a glimpse of the warmth she must have felt, the safety of being with Arthur. Her eyes shined with the evening sun, creating a painting of hazel-brown sparkles that made Arthur's chest swell with near pure pride. Arthur then lost that lovely view as Talia glanced downwards at a small silver necklace Arthur had around his neck. Her fingers rubbed at the emerald gem before they flickered with sudden happiness. She tapped Arthur's left shoulder to be let down, humming in a relaxed state. "I love you, Talia," he said, letting her go. "Silly little lady." Talia shouted gleefully as she ran off to the couple's outdoor deck. Smiling and shaking his head, Arthur watched his wife entertain herself outside on the couple's outdoor patio. "Great. Now that's gonna be repeated for the next month," he thought, the smile never leaving his face. CH12, Unwanted Company. "Where are my keys?" Arthur asked himself as he rushed around the living room. He had never been late for work and today wasn't going to be that day. "I gotta go." Talia's upset, but she should be fine. "See you later." Arthur quickly huffed as he rushed out the door without a backwards glance. Talia's anger increased every time her eyes landed on Teresa, mostly unintentionally. Her arms brought her hands slapping against her thighs each time her legs took her skipping from the front entrance to the bottom of the stairs. The moaning continued, becoming full wailing tones that pierced the quieting air. Teresa watched from a distance, understanding that touching Talia or speaking to her in such a state would only escalate her. Talia slowed her pace, her anger simmering down slightly, but not completely as she approached the large floor-to-door windows and peeked outside. "Why did Arthur have to leave me with her? He must know that I can't stand her," Talia thought in distress. This thought alone brought up her anger instantly as she bounded back to sideways skipping her original pace. Her hands slapped at her chest twice, 3 times as her moans quieted down to hums in an attempt to calm herself down. All the while, Teresa kept herself back trying to figure out what to do with the situation. "He's coming back, Talia," Teresa suddenly uttered. Her voice. Her irritating, gravel-sounding voice. Why did she have to talk? Why did she have to talk? Why couldn't she just keep quiet? Smash. A glass bowl came crashing down, landing on the ground in pieces, its contents scattering near the stairs and by the couch. Everything seemed to stop except for the two women breathing. Talia's own angry body had stopped after the thrown glass, her face still stormy, but showing a sense of returning, uncertain calmness. The anger cleared away and gave way to sudden sadness and shame as she kneeled down to pick up the bigger pieces. Seeing this, Teresa hurried over to her, but it was too late. A quarter-sized shard nicked Talia's right middle finger, and she winced. "Owie," she exclaimed, holding her hand close to her. Bending down next to Talia, Teresa eyed her softly. "Let's get that fixed, yeah," she suggested calmly. Upstairs in the bathroom, the women remained quiet, the only sounds of Teresa shifting through a green-cased first aid kit for some cleaning spray and band-aids. Talia sat on the toilet seat, her eyes facing away from Teresa, occasionally huffing angry air from her lips. Teresa tended to Talia's finger, her actions surprisingly soft for a woman whose face gave anyone chills of intimidation. The roughness of her own fingers felt kind to Talia, but she wasn't about to let Teresa know that. "You must hate me. I wouldn't blame you," Teresa said, a feeble attempt at breaking the silence. No response. Talia snuck a glance at Teresa, then turned away, her face relaxing a bit. The throbbing pain from her finger was too much to focus on Teresa's face. "I still think my brother's a fool for marrying someone like you, but you aren't so bad," Teresa continued. Talia blew frustrated air from her lips at this. "You're like my sons, but a bigger version of them." Teresa sighed, pausing. She carried on. "Arthur knows what he likes, but I can't understand what he sees in you. Maybe I'm the one who doesn't understand," she exhaled. Still facing away, Talia's brow furrowed in irritation at Teresa's rough words, and her left hand clenched her nightgown, anger building slightly. "I hope Arthur knows what he's doing with you," Teresa stated finally. Grabbing a band-aid while holding Talia's finger in wrapped tissues, putting slight pressure on it, Teresa successfully opened the band-aid wrapper with her teeth, then moved to put the band-aid on Talia's finger. Not once did Talia look at her through the process. She just wanted it to be over. More than anything, she wanted Arthur to come home. After fixing up Talia's injury's finger, Teresa stood up and wiped her hands on her pants. "You want to head back downstairs?" Talia nodded, the pain from her finger irritating her. She reluctantly followed Teresa back down to the living room. "She doesn't understand the love me and Arthur have. He loves me and I love him. We care for each other. Why can't she see that?" she thought, watching Teresa's back with annoyance. "Do you want to watch TV or something?" Teresa suddenly said. She stood by the bottom of the stairs, looking up at Talia. "Glass," Talia reminded. Teresa looked over at the glass that remained on the wooden floor. "Oh, let me get that, and then we can watch TV." Talia sat on the last stairs, watching Teresa clean up the glass in slow wonder. Maybe one day they could be friends, but Talia removed that suggested thought from her mind and rocked herself, trying to soothe her growing anxiety. Hopefully Arthur would come soon so Teresa could leave. Later on, the women found themselves resting on the couch, not fully paying attention to the show that continued on in the background. Talia had her small tablet with her, with a piano piece titled "The Smile of a Child" by Paul Reeves playing quietly. Next to her was some blank sheet music paper where Talia wrote out chords for the song. Teresa mainly watched the show playing on TV, but kept glancing at Talia curiously, her eyes watching Talia write. Feet aching, Teresa decided to rest them on the couch with them tucked beside her. Looking up, Talia saw this and gave Teresa a bewildered expression. Taking her free hand, she forcefully pushed Teresa's legs off the couch, which caused Teresa to chuckle. "My spot," Talia declared. "Okay, my bad." Pausing the song on her tablet, Talia got up and headed back upstairs to the bedroom she and Arthur shared. Upon entering, a welcomed sight greeted her. Self-built Lego houses and people formed a makeshift town which rested on a white 2 feet by 5 foot stand had been decorated with various trees, cars, and cotton fluff to resemble snow. One area marked "Not Done" remained on the far right side of the stand. A 1-foot tower made purely from brown 2 by 2 bricks rested on the beige carpet. Smiling, Talia sat down in front of the tower. Tentatively, she fixed a lopsided area near the top and rearranged some bricks to make it more stable. As she moved to work on the upper base of the tower, Talia noticed some of her previous work. One area in the town spelt "Arthur" in medium red bricks at the bottom of what was a built train station. For Arthur, Talia thought warmly. That night, Arthur returned home, his exhausted form slowly trudging through the foyer. Teresa had left an half-hour ago and Arthur wanted to get home fast. Hanging up his keys on the wooden hook beside the door, Arthur removed his jacket and hung it up on the coat rack next to him. Rain had fallen earlier in the day and barely able to avoid it, Arthur's face dripped a bit with rainwater, which he sought to remove immediately by wiping it away with a dish towel that was on the island. Exhaling deeply after cleaning his face, he saw Talia on the couch watching the show Criminal Minds with intense focus. Seeing Talia always made Arthur's day, and just being around her gave him a little happiness, especially if he endured a difficult day. As he gazed at her, Arthur unfortunately remembered what Teresa told him when he was heading home. Earlier in the upstairs bathroom, Talia had escaped from Talia for a bit as she remained downstairs watching TV. She locked herself in the bathroom in case Talia came searching for her, which was unlikely given Talia wasn't fond of her. Teresa held her worn red flip phone to her ear, her breaths uneasy. Arthur, you wouldn't believe the day I had today. I wouldn't have agreed to babysitting your wife if I had known she would be so aggressive. Teresa complained, irritation clear in her tone. What happened? I know she was upset earlier at me leaving, but Chief Hassan doesn't take to us being late. Yeah. Whatever. You need to get a grip on her aggression before she seriously hurts somebody. Teresa, you of all people should be careful how you view people. After all, you've got your sons. Arthur retorted. He scratched an itch on his right forearm as he continued driving on the highway towards a local gas station. That's different, and you know it, Arthur, Teresa said. She paused to peek out the door before closing and locking it again. I didn't choose to marry someone who can't go without hitting people for forgetting to take cheese off a sandwich. Arthur gave a dry chuckle as he smirked. Let me guess. You're hiding in the bathroom to avoid Talia. Am I right? Rolling her eyes, Teresa grimaced at his rightful oversight. Yeah, so? Look, your wife caused mayhem today. She threw a glass bowl at me. Arthur sighed, his expression showing brief sadness. He had pulled into the gas station but sat in the truck, looking out the windows and seeing rain began to drizzle outside. Yeah. I'm sorry, Teresa. Arthur hesitantly started. He turned off the engine, sitting in silence for a moment. He continued, unsure how to word his disappointment of Talia's action, yet he understood she probably was at a breaking point to have thrown the bowl. Talia usually can calm herself down before getting to that point. I will say that you gotta understand how she views people too. If she feels you aren't kind or understanding, she's gonna have feelings about that. That doesn't excuse her nearly giving me a damn concussion, Arthur. Even my sons know better than that. Glancing at his small golden watch, which showed a crack down the middle of the small glass window, Arthur tapped the steering wheel as he leaned forward, but not too close to avoid accidentally honking the horn. Look, Teresa. I gotta get gas in the truck before I get on the road again. I'm not sure what you want me to say here. I will say this through. Just try to understand Talia more on her terms. I'm not excusing her throwing that glass at you in any way, but just try to understand that she's trying her best too. Trying her best to be heard in a world that doesn't accept her way of existing. See you later, yeah. I guess. See you later then. Teresa trailed off. Arthur had hung up the phone, still sitting in the car listening to the drip of the rain on the windows. He took a second to listen to the sound, itself causing Arthur to relax a bit, but the uneasy, unwanted tension still sat deep within. The rain eased his senses a bit. No wonder Talia liked the rain whenever they drove around town, and the weather forecast showed chances of rain happening that day. The sound resembled a rainforest of sorts, and Arthur embraced it. Maybe that was a first step for understanding his wife's world in such an intimate manner. Still watching his wife, lost in a sea of thoughts and buried emotions, Arthur heaved a sigh before heading over to the couch to sit next to Talia. He looked over at her, his face an emotional storm of cautious sternness and uncertain resolve. I heard you and Teresa had an eventful day. You want to talk about it? Shame and embarrassment crept up Talia's face, causing it become warm. She looked away from Arthur, awaiting a lecture on being gentle and mindful. Yet it didn't come. Why not? Arthur always gave a quick lecture about not hurting others whenever she would physically harm others either directly or indirectly. Still, she remained quiet, hoping he would avoid the topic of today's events altogether. But Arthur remained next to her, his very presence beginning to bother her. Getting up from the couch, Talia began pacing, which soon turned to light skipping and barely audible hums leaving her. No more talk, she declared strongly, her skipping slowing to a stop. She stood between the couch and the island, her left leg tapping her leg in an anxious rhythm. She glanced off, not looking in Arthur's direction. Okay, we don't have to talk now. We can talk later, Arthur replied, his voice calm. He stood from where he sat and headed over to the kitchen, glancing at Talia every few seconds. Opening the fridge for a snack or drink, Arthur turned to look at Talia, who remained where she stood. "What do you want for dinner?" "Spaghetti, please." Talia responded quickly, the uneasiness of embarrassment slipping away in the factor of choosing dinner. "That's the third time this week. Don't you want something else?" "Spaghetti, please." Talia repeated, her voice a monotone sing-song tone. "Okay, spaghetti it is then." Arthur then went to the pantry on the other side of the fridge, a few feet over to get some dry spaghetti pasta and tomato sauce. Returning, he placed the ingredients on the counter as he reached under it to get a medium-sized pot and filling it with water. As he placed the pot on the stove, excitement overcame Talia and her legs moved before her brain could process what she was doing. Her hands clasped together before the back of her left hand covered her mouth as squeals overtook her. Chuckling fondly as he turned to see his wife skipping about, Arthur felt his own body relax as Talia's excitement flowed freely through her. Most people wouldn't be as excited over something like spaghetti, but for Talia, it was an all-time favorite, and the very thought of eating it again and again gave her newfound joy. Eating spaghetti or certain types of pasta made Talia squeal with happiness, as it was a food that was safe for her sensitive taste buds. Specific food textures like slimy spinach or rough, rock-feeling fish sticks set her brain afire. It often made her gag in response from even thinking of the texture, so Arthur did his best to avoid those foods. He had no problem with most foods and tried to support Talia by ensuring her safe foods were available. Excitement slowly left Talia's body as she slowed to a quick walking speed, her hands now wringing together in controlled happiness. Long tone moans escaped every now and then as she went to the couch and began rocking ecstatically. "The spaghetti's cooking," Arthur stated as he stirred the pasta. Just the word spaghetti only made her excitement return, the rocking and humming more frequent and louder. Her body moved on its own accord before her brain could catch up and stop her. Talia's flickering fingers soon found a thin women's magazine resting on a dresser near the front door and begun tearing at its pages, creating a snowy mass of shredded paper. A confused look came across Arthur's face as he looked over towards the sound of pages being ripped. Relief soon followed as he saw it was just a magazine that fell victim to Talia's rampant overexcitement. Looking up suddenly from the mess, Talia's eyes focused on Arthur. His strong, burly arms held a gentle position as he stirred the pasta to a simmer, turning the stove eye off with soft click. She longed to be held by those same arms later as he sang solfege arpeggios till she fell asleep. Her overwhelming desire to be held by Arthur immediately ended her overexcitement as she flopped to the floor and began snaking her fingers through the snowy-like mess of ripped magazine pages. The slow motion soothed her as her eyes never left watching Arthur. "Dinner's ready," Arthur announced from the kitchen. Having went in the living room to sit against the couch to relax, Talia perked up as she heard his voice. "Spaghetti all done?" Talia asked, making her way to the island. "Yes, it is." With a humorous flourish, Arthur presented Talia with her bowl of spaghetti. She went to begin eating but paused as she saw no utensil to use. Seeing her slightly confused expression, Arthur handed her a plastic fork from behind his back. "I was wondering how you were gonna eat that." Arthur smiled. "Silly little lady," Talia replied, taking the fork. Taking his own bowl of spaghetti, Arthur leaned on the island, digging in. Both were silent except for the scraping of forks against the porcelain bowls they each occupied. Talia sighed after finishing a few bites. Arthur repeated, giving a sly grin. "Is it good?" "Good spaghetti." Arthur cooked good spaghetti. "So I can cook." "Last week, you wouldn't touch the meatballs I made. Too meaty. Too much sauce." "Oh, really? Well, remind me to keep my meatballs to myself," Arthur joked. Continuing their shared meal, the couple decided to end the night with gentle piano music playing on Talia's tablet as they rested on the couch together. CH13, The Feelings That Remain. The November air chilled anyone's bones if they were caught outside, and Arthur was no exception. It was a week before Thanksgiving, and the weather clearly wasn't in a forgiving mood. Looking around him, Arthur shivered and rubbed at his arms. He wore a thermal windbreaker with black cargo pants as he stood by his truck with the driver's door slightly opened. Closing it, he went to the back seat door and opened it. There, Talia sat wearing a rainbow fleece jacket and gray jogging pants, her face turned away from Arthur. Irritation radiated from her, creating a sense of warmth that had nothing to do with the truck's heating system. He watched her closely, his arm resting atop the truck's roof while his other rested on his hip. "Are you coming?" Arthur questioned. Talia expressed a short hum in disagreement, her eyes focusing on the swaying tree branches that moved with the wind in a quiet dance. Anything to avoid looking at her husband's face. Arthur shifted his weight to a standing position, glancing behind him briefly. Patrons were entering the community center, and seeing them caused anxiety to build within Arthur. Come on. I can't just leave you here alone in the truck. Arthur paused before continuing. Unless that's what you want. Another quick hum. Talia turned quickly to look towards Arthur, but turned back, stubbornly avoiding his gaze. Sighing, Arthur focused his eyes on the wet concrete, fidgeting with the zipper on his pants pocket. The meeting's starting soon. You can't stay out here, Arthur stated finally. At this, Talia's irritation reached its peak, and she began rocking and humming, the sound low and uneasy. Reaching his own point of frustration, Arthur regarded his wife calmly. Come on. There'll be a place where you can relax, Arthur replied, holding out an arm to Talia. Wrestling with her thoughts, Talia ceased her rocking and hums and closed her eyes for a moment. The sounds of chirping birds, cars driving up and down the road, woodpeckers pecking flowed through her ears like a familiar song. The song of nature getting ready for winter soothed her, causing relaxation to fill her soul. Nodding to herself, Talia took Arthur's outstretched hand and hesitantly climbed out of the back seat. The two made their way to the Milwaukee Outreach Center, which was a large, aging square building that showed its age with weathered, cracked concrete and broken windows. The building was being repaired, but the city had paused it for the local police department's safety meeting. Ivy had began climbing up the building structure, snaking through cracks and windows. As they approached the double doors, Arthur gave the worn building a sideways glance. They could have fixed up the place or put us somewhere else, he thought. Hi. How can I help you today? A loud, cheerful voice boomed. The voice radiated from a very bright-faced woman who looked to be no older than 17, and her loud personality was too much for Arthur, and especially for Talia. Shay held her ears closed to block out the woman's voice. Low moans left her lips as she attempted to calm herself, and she rocked forwards and back. Seeing this, Arthur reached into his small drawstring bag and gave Talia some black safety earmuffs, and she quickly pulled them over her ears. The woman saw Talia's sudden distressed expression and looked down with shame. I'm sorry for being so loud, I'm just really happy today, she apologized quickly. Clearing his throat, Arthur gave the woman a critical look. I'm Lieutenant Wenachowski, and I'm here for the Milwaukee Safety Summit. I should be listed as a keynote speaker. Smiling sheepishly, the woman glanced down at the clipboard in her hand and read the names. Arthur Wenachowski? Yeah. Okay, you're good to go. Hope you do well, the woman replied, watching as the couple headed into the center. Upon entering the center, Talia's worries morphed into sudden curiosity as she started sideways skipping while humming loudly. Seeing this, Arthur's earlier frustration grew, and he shook his head as he watched his wife excitedly explore the new environment. Arthur took a moment to look around him at the almost empty area. On one side were black cloth chairs set in neat rows of 6, with some even spacing between them. In front of the chairs was a long 3-foot wooden stage with a tree bark-colored podium in the middle. Various blue and yellow posters with the words, "Keep Milwaukee Safe," hung all around the area. The other side of the center had been left alone as the repairs for the place were still ongoing. Large, circular tables covered with satin-thick cloth were pushed over to make room for the meeting attendees. Taking it all in, Arthur smiled briefly at his surroundings and was pleasantly surprised at the way things turned out. Before he could fully absorb the place, he heard a familiar voice from behind him. Arthur, you made it. The voice was none other than his partner, Thomas. Having gotten a new haircut, Arthur blinked at him a few times before giving him a sideways hug. Nice to see you too. Nice haircut. Got some ladies to impress? Arthur joked. Nah, just felt like I needed it cut. Was growing too fast for me. How are you? Thomas replied. Suddenly, a loud moan rippled through the air followed by a series of grunts and squeals, causing both men to look around. Arthur instantly knew was making such sounds. Watching fondly, he saw Talia pacing the length of a makeshift hallway separated with long black curtain partitions. While making such sounds, her arms moved to and fro in an outward motion with her elbows held up near her upper body. The motion accompanied by her sequels, grunts and moaning caused other patrons to glance her way. Unnecessary embarrassment crept up Arthur's spine as he eyed the people looking her way. Thomas looked at her with a curious yet hesitant expression. Who's that? He asked. Arthur sighed wistfully, eyeing Talia with familiar warmth. That would be my wife, he simply stated. That's your wife? Huh. Never would have guessed. She's surely something. Arthur nodded, exhaling through his nose. Yes, she is. Thomas gave one more glance towards Talia before facing Arthur. I'm gonna go get some refreshments. You're good. I should be. Arthur responded, his tone a bit flat. Thomas headed off to a table that had unwrapped cookies, chocolate and vanilla cupcakes and sandwiches of varying types, while Arthur remained where he stood. Talia continued her movements and vocalizations, distress rising slightly as people continued to fill the space. Noticing, Arthur headed her way. Talia saw him as she paced, and this only heightened her emotions, her arms swaying and skipping becoming quicker. When she returned to start again, Arthur stood slightly in front of her, slowing her pace a bit. You want to take a break? Arthur questioned. Answering with a quick hum, Talia took a seat at a nearby circular table and rocked while patting her leg repeatedly. Arthur watched her, a tired feeling entering his body. Rubbing his eyes, Arthur hadn't noticed the chief approaching. Hey, Wenachowski. Good to see you. Ready for your speech? Giving a brief, tired smile, Arthur exhaled slowly before speaking. Somewhat. Hope you're doing well today, Chief. Chief Hassan seemed to look more older, fragile-like. His wreathed body moved slower than normal and his face always looked tired. He knew what kept him tired constantly, but seeing Arthur only made him hide it more. He couldn't let him know the truth. Arthur saw his mentor moving slower than usual and gave a sad smile. You feeling okay, Chief? Yeah. Don't worry about me, Wenachowski. These old bones still can move. Chief Hassan chuckled. I'll always worry about you, Chief. Arthur stated, his voice a somber tone. Without warning, screeching, teeth-grinding microphone feedback flooded the common area as a hostess tapped on the microphone attached to the podium. Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to let you know that the meeting is starting in a few minutes here, so make your way over to the refreshment table or take a bathroom break. Chief Hassan will start us off very soon, the hostess announced before stepping away. Sighing wearily, Chief Hassan gave Arthur a quick pat on the shoulder as he made his way to the stage. The sad glance gave way to a worried look as Arthur stared at Chief Hassan's back. He hoped whatever was keeping him this tired would release its hold on him and return him back to his former self. Hey, whoever made these sandwiches knows what they're doing. Turning to the voice, Arthur saw Thomas approaching once again. Not caring much about the food, Arthur gave Thomas an appreciable grin. Yeah, he trailed off, still watching the chief get set up to speak. Thomas noticed Arthur's gaze and followed it to see the chief bracing himself against the podium with his weakened arms. Worried about the chief? Thomas commented. Yeah, very. Arthur admitted. That alone caused some relief to enter his body as he faced Thomas, who was polishing off his sandwich. He's gonna be fine. He knows what he's doing, Arthur. I hope so. Arthur sighed deeply. Looking around at the filling seats, Thomas clapped Arthur on the shoulder in a gentle manner. Gonna go find my seat. You good? He questioned, concern etched in his eyes. Arthur gave a small nod and Thomas headed off, leaving him alone with his scattered thoughts. Taking a seat across from where Talia sat, Arthur leaned back and crossed his leg over the other, picking at his nails. Silence wasn't his forte, especially in crowded spaces. He felt he needed to distract himself from all the people gathering to attend the meeting. Talia's body moved to its own rhythm, restlessness taking over. Boredom made Talia uneasy, so rocking and humming became her friends in this unfamiliar place. It grounded her for a moment, but it wouldn't last. Talia's skin felt like it was on fire as she attempted to escape the feeling of boredom and her movements became rigid. Tight almost. Her hands clasped each other, palms opposite one another, and held against her chin. The rocking, which had been subtle, became quicker in an agitated manner. She didn't want to upset or annoy anyone, yet her body couldn't take it anymore. The pressure of sitting in such a restless state was too much. Talia went from sitting to standing in moments, half skipping, half walking on tiptoes. Her fingers on her left hand were intentionally postured at odd angles, while her right rhythmically patted her leg. As her body moved to ease the restless feeling that continued through her, Talia's gaze focused on the light green and white tiled flooring before slowly drifting upwards to glance at the refreshment table.